Welcome to this lesson. We saw two types of condition statements in the previous lessons. So for now, let's take a look at looping statements. So looping statements as in loops. So what are loops? They're basically types or syntaxes of the JavaScript programming language that allow a programmer to execute the same statement or a set of statements again and again for a number of times specified. So just like loops work in the real world, that's how they work in JavaScript as well. The same thing will be executed again and again and again until we tell the browser to stop executing that statement. Alright, so there are several looping statements out there, like there is the for loop, and then the while loop, then do while, and so on. But in this particular course, we'll only be looking at the for loop because we'll be using it in our program later on. So any loop basically does just this. It checks for a condition, and as long as that condition is true, it'll execute the statements within the loop. Once the condition becomes false, it'll stop executing. So that's how a loop as such works, and each of these looping statements have their own syntaxes and their own way of doing things. So that's the only difference between them. So the syntax for the for loop is like this. So the keyword we're going to be using is for, and then inside the parentheses, instead of just one particular condition or variable like we did with the if and the switch statements, for a for loop there's going to be three different mini statements within it. So the first one is going to be initialization, and then there's going to be a semicolon, and then we're going to have a condition statement, and then another semicolon, and an increment statement. And then as usual, there's going to be two flower brackets, and within that, statements or lines of code that have to be executed repeatedly will be placed here. Okay, so that's the simple syntax of how a for loop works. So let me show you an example so you understand how this works, because right now I'm pretty sure you're confused. So I want to create a program that displays the numbers 1 to 5 with a for loop. Alright, so to do that, I'll first declare and initialize a variable called I. So let me declare it, variable I, and then initialize it to the value 1. So that's the initialization statement. This is one of the ways of doing initialization, or I could also do it like this, var I, and then in here I just assign the value. So either work the same. Then I'll give it a condition in here. So for that, I'll be using one of the condition operators as usual. The loop should stop when the variable I reaches number 5, since we only wanted to display the numbers 1 to 5. That's why the initialization statement has a value 1. So in here, the value should be till 5, and once it reaches 5, so I is less than or equal to 5, the whole loop would stop. So finally, I'll increment the number by 1 every time the loop runs. This can be done in multiple ways. I could say I is equal to I plus 1, or I could say I plus equal to 1. I told you how I plus equal to 1 works before. Or finally, I could use I plus plus. This is one of the most common ways of incrementing a loop. So I plus plus basically means this, I is equal to I plus 1. So it's just another short way of writing I is equal to I plus 1. So in this particular example, I'll be using I plus plus. This increment statement is executed every time after the loop runs. So it won't be executed before the first run of the loop, only after. So the first run is going to be I is equal to 1, and then it's going to check if I is less than or equal to 5. So 1 is less than or equal to 5. So the statements within this loop would run, and then it'll go back here, and before it checks again, it'll increment this. So it'll make I value into 2 this time. So when the condition statement is checked this time, it'll be 2 is less than or equal to 5, and not 1 is less than or equal to 5. So that's how after a statement is executed, then the increment statement is run. So when the second and the third and so on conditions are checked, every time the I value is incremented. So the condition statement, on the other hand, would be executed even before the loop is run the first time. So every time a loop is run before, then this condition statement should be executed, and every time after the loop is run, the increment statement would be executed. And this initialization statement would only be executed at the first time. Once you initialize, this particular statement would not be visited again at all. So we finished our for syntax. Now inside we need to write our statements. So now I'll display the values needed with another output function of JavaScript, the document.write function. This basically appends the value within the parentheses to the web page. Alright? You'll see once I show you the output. So we won't be using it in our project though. We'll only be using alert statements in our project, but I just mentioned it for the sake of explaining how for loops work. So in here I need to write I. So the value of I every time these statements are executed would be printed out in our web page. So the first time it will be 1, and then it will be 2, 3, 4, 5. And then next time it goes back and 5 becomes 6 because the increment statement is executed. Then this condition would be executed, and that says 6 is less than equal to 5. That's actually false. So after that, the for loop would not be executed again at all. So let's take a look at our output to see if we get the same result that we predicted. See, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So after that, nothing else was printed because the for loop execution has stopped because the condition statement has become false. So that's how a for loop works. And that's it for this lesson as well. So I'll see you in the next lesson. Thank you.